Azale, who is ready to get the player perspective with Cloud9's AD carry Sneaky.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Sneaky, who just took a 2-0 over CLG. And I got to ask, first off, a lot of support from the fans here. How does it feel coming into this week? You knew probably would be a pretty tough matchup. Were you guys confident?
We knew CLG was struggling a bit, so we didn't think it would definitely be easy, but we were pretty confident in our abilities, and I think we improved a lot over the last whole week. And even though we dropped the game to Phoenix yesterday, I think we learned a lot from that.
Awesome. So game one brought out the Ashe. Obviously, got ahead very, very early in that. Game two, Caitlyn. Coming into 6-11, how do you feel about the ADCs now? Like, do you feel that with the Lucian nerfs, he's no longer on top? What's the priority for you looking like, and how do you feel about that?
I'm not entirely sure about Lucian anymore. He got nerfed, but there was a lot of people still playing him in scrims, so I didn't touch him too much. I think he's okay. He feels a little bit awkward because the only time you can actually hit your Q in lane is if they're going for a last hit. So it's way harder to poke them down. But overall, AD carries are in an interesting spot. They're like kind of sticking to the utility part again, where it's like Ashe, Kalista, Sivir. Not so much Kalista, but I don't know. It's okay for me. I don't mind playing those kind of champions. I actually really like playing Ashe. She does so much damage, and Caitlyn's pretty cool.
Caitlyn is pretty cool and can definitely bring the damage. So, another question. As the ADC, in this 6-man roster, you're swapping back and forth for supports. How do you adjust going from game to game?
It's not too different for me playing with both supports. I think they have a pretty similar playstyle because it's more about just how we play as a whole, and they kind of just bring the same things, maybe a little bit different champion priority. And I'd say both of them played really well today. Bunny was landing tons of hooks on Afro in 6A. It was pretty gross. And then the last game, Smoothie was doing really well.
Awesome. Well, congrats again, and good luck next week against TSM. Now for more, let's send it to Dash and the guys at the desk.
Thank you very much, Azale. Cloud9 2-0 over our defending champions. Got to see that impressive base push and very elongated fight around the Nexus turrets, but pulling it off and putting kind of their stamp on it as they do continue to switch out that roster. We saw Bunny play game one. We saw Smoothie play game two. Same result. So they're going to be happy walking away with a victory with both sets of rosters.
Yeah, I think it was a good win for Smoothie. I think he was starting a little dogged by the community because they had a better win rate with Bunny, but you see that it's not always just because of that. Other players can play worse for one game, and
right.
It has nothing to do with you. So Bunny stepped up here, Smoothie stepped up, had a pretty good game two.
Yeah, on that Nami, we saw making multiple roams, and that's where I want to jump into our replays for this game specifically. 15:30 into the game, 3-for-0 for Cloud9 off of aggression from CLG. But Sneaky and Smoothie are going to roam up here. They're going to answer that aggression and counter gank Xmithie, as well as the quick TP in from Impact.
Yeah, I mean, that was the kind of thing where you just have like a moment's notice. The Nami wave comes through, the bubble comes through. He's able to keep Jensen alive with the heals, and that's kind of the story of C9 is that they're very good about reacting to other teams' plays. They always seem to be just in the right position. It doesn't always work out necessarily, but it's never like, oh, we're totally blindsided. I don't see that much.
Yeah, and then, of course, we're going to move to the 18-minute mark into the game. Same exact thing happens. CLG aggression out of Darshan in the top lane. We're going to have a rotation to the top from both Meteos and Smoothie, and they're going to pick up 2 kills here, 2 for 0.
Yeah, I mean, this was another situation where CLG starts to play. It looks like it might be a solo kill. Impact was actually probably baiting it the entire time, kind of knew that he had backup coming. Then they finally get here just a little bit before the rest of the team, and they start picking people up. Once again, Smoothie landing nice bubbles, landing a good ultimate as well earlier, and Jensen on the backside finally gets the kill.
There it is, nice and clean. So, Dyrus, let me ask you this. We have talked a little bit about CLG, vacation time, struggling to catch up to the meta, all that kind of stuff, because they did. They were playing on previous patches at MSI. They, of course, had the least amount of time of all the teams to adjust to the current state of the game. But beyond all that, one wouldn't think, looking at the defending champions and the way that they played at MSI, that they would be struggling this much. So, from your perspective, your diagnosis, what is the #1 issue that the CLG roster has?
So comparing CLG from then to now it's kind of weird because you see Stixxay performing a lot better. It feels like he's learned the most from MSI and all this, where in the playoffs, it felt like Huhi and Darshan were like carrying really, really hard. But you see in these games, while they're not playing as well as they used to, or maybe other teams got way better, like, it just kind of flipped on its head. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, it almost seems like, we used to talk so much about how CLG was the macro team in NA, right? That they were the ones who won through the map movement, but here it was C9 beating them around the map. We already saw 2 examples of that, recognizing where the pressure was going to go, matching that pressure, or even exceeding that pressure in terms of their rotations. And so seemed to have CLG's number, and CLG's still at a loss for it.
Yeah, I mean, you saw them kind of give up a free Baron at the end of that game where C9 was just rushing it down. CLG wasn't quite in position, and then they try and contest the Rift Herald, or not the Rift Herald, excuse me, the Elder Dragon, and the Darshan ends up dying in that fight, which leads to that long sequence at the end. But it seems like CLG is struggling with these kind of map-focused portions of the game. Maybe they're not used to the new Elder Dragons and all the different kinds of dragons, and it's something that they need to learn to prioritize better because they had been on the old patches.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where they're so behind that they still need to look for picks, but if they don't look for picks, C9's just going to sneak the Baron, push up with Baron, go grab Elder, and then they're going to fight with Elder and Baron. So if you were to choose a fight and skip steps since you're behind on tempo, farm, and priority, it would be very good to choose somewhere near that Baron time to, even if you lose it, you'll have another chance later on.
Yeah, I think one interesting distinction to make is that CLG doesn't necessarily look too far behind once they're in the fights, right? We have 29 minutes into the game. We saw a nice 3-for-3 mid lane fight that kind of transpired between the 2 teams, showcasing that, CLG, again, as individual players, understand how to play League of Legends and can execute properly in a team fight itself, but it's other areas that they seem to be lacking right now.
Right, Smithy played a lot of these team fights extremely patiently where
This re-engage.
Yeah, he has so many good re-engages where you look like, oh, they're about to win this fight. Stixxay's getting good damage in, and then it just turns back where Stixxay is just barely able to live through like this bait healing with Soraka, and you think, oh, maybe they're not going to win, but then he finally gets the kill and ends up this crazy, was it 2 for 2? Or
3 for 3. Yeah, there it is.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you can see that it's not like they're super outclassed. It's just once they fall behind a little bit in the early game, C9 is far enough ahead to win just through that small advantage they already created earlier. It's not like they're constantly outplaying them from there.
Absolutely. That's going to take us to player of the game, going to Meteos this time around, 1-1-16 on that Rek'Sai. We saw him very early on visiting that mid lane, getting first blood picked up for Jensen. And so Rek'Sai, very comfortable champion for him so far in this split.
I think it came at a very fortunate time. We see Rek'Sai going up the priority list of a lot of people, Kindred, Nidalee down, Rek'Sai up, and that's a Meteos specialty.
I'm glad I retired before I had to face the terror of these Rek'Sai players, because Rek'Sai is everything a top laner can hate.
Well, yeah, particularly if you're sitting on the blue side because of that cheeky tunnel behind the turret. This gets you from the tri-brush every single time. That said, Cloud9 2-0 over CLG, moving to 3-1 on the split so far. Of course, they are going to be going into their match of the week against TSM next week with a little bit of confidence, but they definitely are going to have their work cut out for them when they get to that. That's going to do it for us, though, here on NALCS 2. Of course, we still have action taking place over on NALCS 1. Before we head over there, let's take a look at the updated standings. TSM is still standing tall on top, no longer undefeated in games, but they still stand with that perfect match record following their 2-1 over Immortals earlier today. Envy tied up with TSM for first, though, because they also sit at 4-0, and of course, tied for third, we've got Cloud9 and Immortals. In fifth, it's Apex. Sixth is occupied by Echo Fox currently. Energy and CLG are knotted up in seventh. In ninth, we have Liquid, and in 10th place, Phoenix 1. Now, we're fresh out of games for this weekend, but there's more League of Legends just over the rainbow. On Wednesday at 5 p.m. PST, Primetime League returns, and be sure to keep your streams online following PTL because the North American Challenger Series airs right after that. Then the EU LCS is going to hit your screens on Thursday, starting with Roccat versus Origin on EU LCS 1, and check out H2K facing off against G2 later in the day on EU LCS 2. In North America, we resume LCS action next Friday with two back-to-back matches, starting with our match of the week with Cloud9 versus TSM, followed by a head-to-head between Liquid and Phoenix 1. That's a whole lot of information, gentlemen. I hope you got it all.
A glass of water? Are you okay?
I know, seriously. I'll take a breather. You talk about the matches that I just teed up. I mean, obviously, C9 TSM is a big one based on the performance out of C9 today.
I'm really curious how that one's going to turn out because TSM versus Immortals were very, very close today, and that could have went either way. And C9 did very well against Immortals the other week.
Yeah, I think C9's definitely the team to watch for me, just because they seem to be improving more than any other team, and they already have such strong players. You wonder what the ceiling is on this team, whereas Immortals and TSM, they've had a lot more time together. They had a lot of returning players from last season, most of them I mean, only one player changed out between those two teams. So they had a lot of synergy heading forward, and it's just wondering, what are people going to look like at the end of the season? I think that's why C9 is so interesting.
More important than anything, what this all means is we just have so much League of Legends to consume. We're all wrapped up over here on NALCS 2, so we're going to go head over to NALCS 1 to join the coverage of Echo Fox versus Liquid, where Liquid currently has